The political governance is different. It's how to organize the tasking process, to define priorities, etc. And for me, it's the role of the European Union to do it. It's not the role of ESA. ESA is not a political actor. It's a technical one. And as I told you that ERS is the first big step for the future EOGS, the European Union, probably the Commission, will define this political governance. And for me, a possible model would be what we do today with the EU Satellite Center. This is an EU agency building geospatial intelligence. And the 27 member states can use this EU Satellite Center following the existing governance rules and could be a model for the future EOGS system.
Hello, Space Watchers, and welcome to Space Café Radio. And today we will explore one of Europe's most ambitious space initiatives yet, the European Resilience from Space, or short ERS. It's a program that aims to give Europe independent, secure and rapid access to intelligence from orbit, a true systems of systems designed for a more contested space. To unpack what this really means for European security and autonomy, I'm joined by Pascal Legai, security advisor to ESA's Director General Josef Aschbacher and a leading voice on intelligence, surveillance and resilience from space. Pascal, welcome to Space Café Radio. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well, and as this is a very active period because we have this council meeting at ministerial level on the 26th, 27th of November in Bremen, to take very important decisions for the future.
And before we will dive in deeper, let's listen to Dr. Aschbacher, who I catched in Berlin last week at a conference on exactly that topic. Dr. Aschbacher, you warned that Europe is still too fragmented to guarantee real space resilience. What's your plan to turn ERS into a concrete activity for European space and the defense assets?
ERS is a very good example how to really unite Europe, because one observation I have, and I've just discussed this in a larger meeting yesterday in Brussels with representatives of the Commission and industry, top representatives of European space industry, what we see is, number one, space is very attractive and in many domains really sees a lot of support, including in the defense domain. And this is good news because Germany is, of course, a very good example with the announcement of Minister Pistorius. And that's really great news. However, and this is something that many industry representatives, European Commission, also myself, see as a risk, that we might see a nationalization or renationalization of efforts and activities. And that's exactly what we want to offer as ESA, a solution that national investments can stay nationally with national industry, of course, implemented and for national purposes. That means for the user, which is most likely the defense ministry or some defense capability, but integrated in the European framework through standardization, interoperability, so that a national system in Germany can communicate with a national system in France, in Italy, and other European capabilities. And to build up such a system is a huge task, is not an easy one technically and from a project management point of view, but that's exactly what ESA can offer and what ESA wants to do through the ERS program, that we have a system of systems where each owner keeps ownership of its system. We will enrich it at European level with new satellites, additional capability, new technologies, making sure it's future-oriented and a modern system, if I may simplify a bit, but making sure that national countries keep control of their assets in a European context and in an enriched system that we are building up gradually.
Can you step back for a moment to explain our audience what ERS stands for and what it will entail?
Yeah, sorry, I was using an acronym, and this is a danger which we have in space quite often. ERS, European Resilience from Space. It is a system that we are defining right now together with the European Commission as a major partner, also a future anchor customer, to build up a system for intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, as it is used in defense terminology. That means composed of very high resolution optical sensors, radar sensors, possibly infrared sensors, which are not yet existing today, at least at this capacity that is required. A system that will have a very high observation frequency, because today we have a few countries with their own national systems, which are excellent in terms of technical performance, but there's only a few of them, a handful of them in each country. So if you add them up, you still have only a few dozens of those satellites bringing a few dozens of images of a certain crisis area per day. And what we really need, or what the users really need, this is what we get from the defense community, is an image every 20, 30 minutes. And this is exactly what we are going to build up. We do not have this today. It is being built up right now in China. It is built up right now in the United States. The United States already has some very strong capabilities, but they're further building it up through what is called Starshield and the future, obviously, activities that they're investing in the US. So this is something that happens outside Europe, but Europe more and more, because of geopolitical considerations, needs to build up its autonomy, its strength, its independence in terms of information content. And yes, ERS is the answer to do that. It's a first step together with the Commission. So it's really a gradual build up, but will be very fast. I would like to see the first satellites fly in 28.
You just talked about the complexity of the system. Let's talk about funding for a moment. It's on the agenda for the ESA Ministerial Conference in Bremen in the next weeks. And you spoke about the urgency. And if I'm correct, so it's about $1 billion you're expecting from the member states. What is the response from the member states so far? So do you have a good feeling at this moment?
I have a very good feeling. In fact, I'm in discussion with many countries, I would say almost all the countries of ESA, including in many places the ministers of defense or the ministers of defense. I know that many countries are organizing funding right now in order to contribute to this program. I don't want to mention a figure because this would not be appropriate. Some of the information I got is, of course, confidential and a bit sensitive also. But I'm certainly expecting a good subscription to the program because it is needed for Europe. ESA can be a good partner. As I say, we are always building up capacity on behalf and with the member states. So we are an intergovernmental organization, meaning that the governments really are driving and defining what we do and how we do it. And the recipients or the customer is always our member states. That means our governments, which are funding the program. So yes, I have a good feeling, but we shall see at the ministerial how it plays out and what the actual subscription will be.
Last question is, Europe is planning the European Space Shield. So how will ERS be integrated, or will it be at all an integrated part of it?
Yeah, this is a discussion which is just starting. The Space Shield was just announced, as you know very well. We are in discussion. As I mentioned, I'm in Brussels once or twice a week, and we have very good dialogues with our colleagues there. It's too early to say, to be honest, but it's clear that synergies need to be found, but they have yet to be defined.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That was ESA's Director General Josef Aschbacher outlining the strategic intent behind ERS, Europe's answer to build resilience in orbit. So, Pascal, you've been advising the Director General on security and intelligence matters for years. What is your elevator pitch for ERS?
For me, the very important point is time to take decision and time to implementation, because as the geopolitical context is very challenging, I would say, and even critical. And we need to go fast because, as you know as well, Russia, for instance, is rearming very quickly. And it's time for Europe to react. And this ERS program proposal is an important step to move forward, European Resilience from Space, because it's very first step, the first building block of the future EOGS. ESA and the EU are working hand in hand to build capacities with reactivity to face this international context. So the main purpose of ERS is to create a federation of systems and base the first and foremost on the existing systems and to make sure that this system can speak to each other, to be connected together and to have a better reactivity and delivery of data, relevant data for the end user.
Let's unpack that in a few segments. Let's start with the architecture and the command and control structure behind. Can you describe the architecture for us? So the satellites, the ground stations, the services, what it will entail?
Yes, it's a very important question in terms of architecture. And the main purpose of ERS is to take into account the full chain from the sensor to the end user. In other words, that means to have the capacity to optimize the data collection with the multiple sensors covering a big part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So data collection is important, but also data transmission from space to the ground in a quick and secure way. And also the very important part also after data transmission is the data transformation from raw data into actionable information. So what is important is to achieve is to optimize data collection, data transmission, and data transformation in a reactive way to make sure that we meet the needs of end users, in particular users on the ground. And this is the architecture we plan to build. And I said at the beginning that rely first and foremost on the existing systems. but also we have in mind the planned systems. That means not yet existing, but already planned in terms of budget, in terms of technical requirements, etc. ERS Square is an example. And also to identify the capability gaps to make sure that we can fill these gaps in the longer future, I would say. This is the mechanism.
So let's try to translate it in my language. So we're talking about a constellation of satellites, the sensors that are capturing, you mentioned the electromagnetic spectrum. So you do RF monitoring, but no burst imaging, or is that included because it's part of the electromagnetic spectrum? So I'm asking precisely, so is it then hyperspectral, SAR, everything in between?
Yes, in fact, when I speak about data collection, that means to use optical sensors, of course, radar sensors. Also, we have in mind also the thermal infrared option, the hyperspectral as well, but not only I would say the fixed imagery, but also the mobile video. The video systems, at the moment for a satellite, a video system is not something technically easy to implement, but the possibility would be to connect satellites with the drones or high altitude pseudo satellites to use also this video capability to face the today's situations.
But all of these capabilities that you just mentioned are highly specialized, and to have that in one satellite, it sounds very ambitious. So will it be separate fleets or separate constellations? Because you mentioned also ERS, so I'm taking off the communication parts here.
So ERS, in fact, is 3 pillars. One is the Earth observation part. The second one is in terms of connectivity, to use ERS Square as the backbone of this connectivity approach. And also in terms of PNT, positioning, navigation, timing. Also the LEO PNT proposal is a part of this package in the future navigation program existing to optimize again the different capacities. What we want to achieve is not to have space seen as separated pillars, but to have a transversal horizontal approach to combine the qualities of these different components. Earth observation, telecommunications, and positioning, navigation, timing is the main objective of the program. And to answer your question about the different constellations and capacities, so we offer this to the different system owners to join this ERS approach, to the commercial owners, also the national ones, but also the institutional capabilities. When I speak about institutional, the EU systems in particular. So as you can understand, this is on a voluntary basis to join this federation of systems approach to the different participants. What is important is for them to see a real interest to join this federation of systems.
So does it mean that ESA will not own the satellites, or will ESA own these satellites that we're talking are in the ERS context, or is ERS more in an architecture where everyone can buy in when they meet the standards?
So as ESA is the main objective of ESA is to design and develop space systems. Once these systems are operational, is to hand over the systems to the operational actors. For instance, EU agencies to use these systems, etc., or at national level as well. When we develop systems for the different nations, member states, they operate themselves this system later, once again the system is available and functional. At the moment, we are working, as I told you, with ERS to build the future EOGS. EOGS, this is an EU system. EU will be the owner of this EOGS capability. And the ERS is the first, again, building block to build this upcoming EOGS. In terms of commercial system, this is the commercial actors are the owners of their own commercial systems. And at national level, they are also the owners of their systems.
So I think I grasped a bit where you're coming from that. ERS is often described as a systems of system, as you also alluded a moment ago. And from a command and control perspective, what does that mean in practice? Who will actually steer or control this constellation when time-critical decisions are needed because you're targeting the security sector?
Absolutely. No, this is a fundamental question, this C2, command and control. When you say this C2, for me that means governance of the system. How to use it in concrete terms, operational ways. For me, we have to make a distinction between the political governance and the technical governance. I explain what I mean with this. I start with the technical governance. The technical governance is the way to propose technical solutions to allow our users to use in a proper way the ERS system. An example, if the 23 ESA member states want to task ERS in the future simultaneously at the same time, we have to develop the necessary appropriate components to permit this simultaneous access to the 23 member states. And we can do it from a technical point of view. We can facilitate to ease this common access at the same time to the users. For instance, building the constellation with a sufficient number of satellites. We have also to take into account the transmission capability to offer the possibility to transmit a huge amount of data at the same moment to support different needs. And also in terms of ground and infrastructures, to have the necessary dimension for the tasking of different users at the same time. So it's what I call the technical governance. We have the technical solutions to ease a common joint access at the same moment for different users. The political governance is different. It's how to organize the tasking process, to define priorities, etc. And for me, it's the role of the European Union to do it. It's not the role of ESA. ESA is not a political actor. It's a technical one. And as I told you that ERS is the first big step for the future EOGS, the European Union, probably the Commission, will define this political governance. And for me, a possible model would be what we do today with the EU Satellite Center. This is an EU agency building geospatial intelligence. And the 27 member states can use this EU Satellite Center following the existing governance rules, and could be a model for the future EOGS system.
You just talked about the political governance, and I found this distinction very interesting. So at the moment, it's an ESA program that you mentioned about to hand it over to the EU. We know that not every ESA member is an EU member. We have more European countries. So we have this overlap. Is ERS ultimately an EU program that you're aiming for?
ERS is a NISA program. And to answer your question, it's why this ERS program proposal is divided in two components. One is called Element 1, the other one is called Element 2. Element 1 is to work on the future EOGS, clearly to support the EU orientations towards this EOGS future system. And Element 2 is more focusing on the national needs. And for instance, the non-EU members can take part in the Element 2 to support the development of their national priorities and capacities. For Element 1, for the non-EU ESA members, that means very probably to negotiate with the EU to contribute to Element 1 and to have access in the future to EOGS. This is a more political aspect.
Okay. Let's talk about the data exchange and interoperability. One challenge Dr. Aschbacher mentioned in our short conversation is that Europe needs imagery every 20 to 30 minutes. So this implies a huge volume of data at the end of the day. So how will this exchange work? You alluded a bit on the system architecture, but especially between the civilians, the defense, and the commercial providers.
Yes. So you're fully right, because I said at the beginning that ERS is a data collection, data transmission, data transformation. So data is the central blood, I would say, of this federation of systems. And to manage this huge amount of data, we are thinking about solution as well. And for instance, from a very technical terms, the in-orbit processing is important. That means for in-orbit, it's possible to select the relevant data and not to download to Earth unnecessary data. This is the first step of the process, in-orbit processing, to transmit only, I would say, useful data to the ground.
So using edge computing in space,
for instance,
and these current state-of-the-art technologies.
Yes. High-performance computing in space, but also on Earth, on the ground. We have also this capability, and ESA is also developed a strong HPC capacity also to handle this huge amount of data. What is important also in the terms of solutions we plan, as I told you, ERS is a federation of systems, but also we are examining at the moment for the data processing and use, a federation of data spaces, of databases, if you want. So how is it possible to interconnect between them different thematic data spaces, databases, to benefit from all the thematic data spaces existing or planned in the future? So this is also an approach. And in terms of access rights, because We plan to have access to commercial data, to national data, to institutional data. We plan to do it during the implementation phase of ERS to examine how to use the commercial, national, institutional data, defining again the access rights to be optimal for the data use.
How are you doing it? Sharing of classified data, of sensitive data, is an issue within a country, but especially cross-border, even among allies. So how is that foreseen in ERS? And what role is ESA then play here?
As you know as well, Torsten, you know it very well, that at EU level, we are already handling sensitive or classified data. Yeah. At ESA level, we have this full capability. We have the necessary secure context also to handle sensitive and also classified data. So we have the existing context to do it at the moment. Again, during this implementing phase of ERS program, we will address at the very beginning of the program these issues of data access and how to handle in a common way, I would say, between 27 member states, properly access to sensitive or classified data. But the mechanism is already existing at EU level, for instance.
I'm just putting so much hope in that we will have a mechanism to handle this issue. So let's talk about the funding industry and the integration. So the first phase comes with about 1 billion euro on the table. And at least that's what Dr. Aschbacher or what ESA has proposed to the upcoming ESA ministerial. Is that enough to deliver what you just described? Or does it come in phases? Or is it just the 1 billion for the back end?
Thanks for this very important question as well. The funding amount of money, it's at the moment, it's no more 1 billion, it's more 750 million or even 700. This is an ongoing discussion to determine the envelope. But what is the most important is to start the process. And so as you can imagine, and the ESA Director General told you that we have very active discussions with the ESA member states, and we have a good feeling concerning this contribution to ERS. My personal feeling as a security advisor to ESA Director General is that we will be very close to the target in terms of budget, and it will be possible to start this implementation, element 2, but also element 1, and I am confident in this regard.
Okay, so we will see then on the 27th of November, as you alluded, if member states are signing on that. My last segment is the strategic and the geopolitical dimension that comes with that. ERS also carries a clear geopolitical signal. Europe wants autonomy in space intelligence, because that's what we are lacking at the moment. So how do you see ERS positioning Europe between allies and competitors?
Also very important issue you're raising. For me, you are a credible partner if you have defense, military, dual-use capabilities. If we have this very credible ERS, EOGS capability, Europe will be credible. In this case, in this context, it's possible to have, I would say, good discussion in a bilateral way with non-European actors to collaborate together. But if we appear, I would say, weak, not in a strong position, this credibility doesn't exist. So it's why I am also underlining the importance to start this ERS program to have this necessary credibility on the international scene.
Okay. Last question, Pascal. If you had to sum it up in one sentence, what must Europe do now to make ERS a reality?
For me, it's a member state's decision, ESA member state decision to move forward. Again, I told you that I'm confident, and this is key because in Europe we have many strong and solid strategies, policies in space for defense, security. What is missing is a strong implementation and a real action to move forward again. And the challenge will be in the member states' hands to start. This is the key challenge.
It's always in the member states' hands. A perfect closing thought. Pascal Legai, Security Advisor to the ESA Director, Dr. Josef Aschbacher. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing these insights about ERS. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Torsten.
If you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@SpaceWatch.Global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.spacewatch.global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Torsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.